So, welcome everyone. Welcome to this evening's Prayer Spaces session on the Emotional Rollercoaster with Rob Stevenette from TLG. We've all come from very different days. We've all been doing different things, engaging with different people. What I'd like us to do, just as we start, is to settle ourselves, try and still your body and your mind just for a moment, and just pause and think about one of the people that you've engaged with today. And I'm going to ask you, just in your own way and quietly in your own way, just we want to say thank you to God for that person, for who they are, what they do, for who they are to us, and for the work or the ministry that they do. God, thank you for these people that we get to work with, that we get to see, we get to meet. Bless them, we pray. And God, we ask that you'd be with us this evening as we listen, as we learn, as we think, as we discuss. Holy Spirit, inspire us with Rob's words and with the questions and comments of others, so that we are wiser and so that we can be more responsive to what you're doing in the lives of children and young people. Thank you. Amen.
Amen.
So, Rob, a very, very, very warm welcome. Thank you so much for giving up your evening to come and join us. Just tell us a little bit about who you are and what TLG is. First of all, who are you? What do you do?
Hey everyone, thanks Tim. Great to be with you this evening. Yeah, my name is Rob, and I have been working for TLG now for 9 years. TLG stands for Transforming Lives for Good, and we're all about partnering with churches to help them serve their communities. And I lead our church partnership team at TLG, so helping churches to connect with schools and families in a couple of different ways. And it's a real privilege to share with you this evening.
So, how big numbers? I suppose how big? What sort of scope does that mean when you're connecting with churches and that across the country? How many, and sort of how broad is the work of TLG?
So, well, we partner with churches through everything that we do. I'll tell you a few stories about where we've come from in a little bit. But we partner with 200 churches across the UK. We also partner with churches through our early intervention coaching program in Portugal as well, where we've got early intervention established, and we partner with churches of all sorts of shapes and sizes. So that's just right at the heart of our DNA, is the local church. We started out as a youth group in an inner city church in Bradford, and started to reach children and families through that. And it's always been through the church, and it's always been through church supporting families. That's what we're about.
And now I know you do TLG. You do several. There are several sort of aspects to what you do, how you help and support children and families. Any that you're not going to mention when you in a moment. What the different things that you do, just in outline, just quickly?
Yeah, so our two core programs. So early intervention is term time based, and that's where we partner with a church to train up a team of coaches, as we call them, and they're volunteers who will have an hour a week working one-to-one with pupils in school. So we give you all the training, resources and support you need, so then as coaches you can really focus on the relationship. And then on the other side of that, we've got Make Lunch. Now it's a separate program. Some churches run both, but some churches run either. And Make Lunch is focused on the holidays, providing space, providing welcome to families who are facing isolation, who are facing food insecurity, but then also connecting with families all year round as well. So lots of our church partners will be gearing up for all sorts of Christmas activity with families, which will be great. And then the training side, which we'll be talking a little bit more about tonight, is something that's really developed over the last few years. It's been great to help people across the UK get alongside children and young people who are struggling with their emotional well-being.
Yeah, which leads us on into the Emotional Rollercoaster. So I'm going to just hand over to you. Just tell us a little bit about the Emotional Rollercoaster, what it is, how we can be helped in looking after the children and young people that we engage with. So, Rob, over to you.
Fantastic. So before I share my slides, really my hope is for this evening is just to introduce you more to the emotional rollercoaster as a training, as a resource. I will give a disclaimer. I'm not one of our expert trainers. We have got some brilliant trainers that provide these sessions online across the UK. We also do some in-person training as well. But I really hope what I'll share this evening will give you commend the training to you, I hope, but also give you some ideas, let you know where you can find out more. I'd also love to share a little bit of the context as to where this work has come from, some of the theory, some of the practitioners that have really spoken into it. And yeah, we'll go from there, and there'll be space for questions. There was also our final session of the year for the Emotional Rollercoaster is next Wednesday evening. I'll put the link into the chat, but I may as well give you the save the date now. It's the 6th next week, and it's 7 till 9 p.m. So spoiler alert, the training is 2 hours long. But what I'll be doing now in about 20 minutes is just telling you a little bit more about where it's all come from. So I'll share some slides, and then we'll go from there. So as I said at the start, the TLG came about through a youth group, and that youth group developed what it was doing with young people in group work, working one-to-one, and we became a charity in a few years later, kind of in the early sort of 2000s. But over the last 25 years since we've been around, we celebrate 25 next year, I think we've learned so much through being alongside children and young people. Of course, children and young people are different, are unique, and I think what we've developed in our programs is just sort of learning from that experience, learning of what works, learning and trying things out. There's always been a real kind of creative heart at TLG. Our founder, Tim Morphin, shares a story about one of the first young people that he came into contact with at this youth group. Was a young lad called Lewis. Lewis was about 13, I think, at this point. And when Tim came to introduce himself to Lewis, Lewis spun around and punched Tim in the stomach. That was the first interaction. Now, fortunately, that was a one-off. That hasn't happened since. But Tim quite quickly got to know what Lewis was up against, and has journeyed with Lewis in all sorts of ways through the youth group. Lewis became part of one of the our first centre that we set up in Bradford. And I think quite quickly what Tim came to see is actually what was behind the behaviour. Often, I don't know if you've seen that iceberg illustration of what's beneath the surface. Behaviour is communication. It communicates a lot. And I think what Tim began to see in Lewis was just the impact of what he was feeling, the anger, growing up in a broken home, growing up with all sorts of chaos. And the youth group became a real space of sanctuary. And I'm sure, as we share this evening, and as obviously Tim introduced just a few moments ago, we'll be thinking of young people that are struggling with their well-being right now. And absolutely, we hope that this could be a resource that could help you have some helpful conversations. And building on the relationships that you have. Over the years, as we've developed at TLG, early intervention, so one of the programs that I mentioned, that started around about 12 years ago, working one-to-one with children and young people. Through that, we've developed lots of different resources, and that context has been really helpful when we came to develop the Emotional Rollercoaster about 3 years ago or so. So a lot of the model, a lot of what we found, what shaped the training, its context has been in that one-to-one work. But also what we've seen with Emotional Rollercoaster is it's worked well, and the resources are useful in larger settings, in group settings, in nurture spaces. So it's had really lots of practical uses for our Make Lunch program, where churches will be opening up their space to connect with children, young people. Could be 30, maybe more children, young people in the room at a time. So it's all about giving some giving insight, giving some guidance. The training itself, it was developed start of 2020, but actually launched right in lockdown one, and it's started off in that space, obviously working doing this training online. So as we've developed, I think something that has been really key is just going through these last 3 years. There's been such an accelerated need where children are struggling with their emotional well-being, whether that be going into COVID or through COVID, things that have exacerbated it. And I think that's been something that's been a big focus of the team, is developing resources beyond this training, or in addition to this training, that really helps build relationship, build connection, goes into all sorts of different themes. And I'll share a link later on to our resource shop, where you can see lots more resources that will build on what I'll be sharing. But yeah, it's very much alongside the experience from the last couple of decades. I think we've learned a lot, and in these last 3 years, as I'm sure we all have. So yeah, it's really involved a lot in that time. The goal of the Emotional Rollercoaster, a sort of 2 hour session, as I've shared, it's not trying to give you everything you need to know about emotional well-being. Of course, it couldn't do that. We're always learning as people, aren't we? As churches, in schools. But it's there to give an introduction. It's there to hopefully, if people leave feeling more confident, feeling encouraged, also feeling supported themselves, then that is great. So it's there to give some insights. It's all about talking about emotional well-being in a relatable way, talking about our emotions in a way that is going to be accessible, that can work one-to-one, that can work in groups, kind of as I've mentioned. The resource that we provide through the Emotional Rollercoaster in terms of the work with young people, it's a resource that we share in PDF form with everyone that attends our training, but also can be purchased, physical copies as well. It's not a Christian resource and as such, but it is definitely equipping, and it's used in all sorts of contexts, used by Christians, used in church ministries in all sorts of different ways. But the resource itself and the resources we've developed on the resource shop are very much work in all sorts of different contexts. So something that can work in school settings, can work in ministry settings as well. The training itself, though, delivered by the TLG team, there's a real rooting in Psalm 23. It's a psalm that's really spoken to us a lot over the last few years, and I know we won't be the only people that have heard a lot from Psalm 23 in recent times. But it's something that has been a huge encouragement, and it's I think a really real anchor for the Emotional Rollercoaster. TLG, all about helping church to bring hope in the future to struggling children, and the roller coaster has really slotted into that really well. So these 3 elements here really unpack what we will do in the 2 hours. First of all, we want to look after ourselves. So actually going through, what does that look like? How do we look after our own emotional well-being? And I think that's a really key point. And I think a point that is often neglected as we look to go out, which is key. And obviously we're all aware of the need in our own context to actually look after ourselves. Is really key. So we make space for that in the training. And that's a lot of where the Psalm 23 context kind of really speaks into. The emotional first aid element. This is also a training session that we run just as the emotional first aid and the leader ready bit, which people can book into. The emotional rollercoaster session incorporates everything, but then adds in the resource as well. So there are options there. The emotional first aid is all about the noticing. So we'll go into, I'll lay out some different elements in a little while, but all about the starting to spot the signs of emotional distress. We unpack a few different theories that have really spoken into this area, some research that we've really benefited from. And then the resource, we start to work through that in the session. And there's some breakout room space as well to unpack stuff. The 2 hours flows really really well. And those sessions all kind of really build on each other. Got Psalm 23 here, and I love these elements of drawing out on the right. Connection, regulation, restoration, love, relationship, empathy, nourishment, honor, hope, and belonging. And they are values that really underpin. We want to support churches, but also I think what we really see, in kind of who we know, what we know in Jesus. We really start from that place, and then from that place look to serve others. So some different elements here. I won't go into detail with time on these, but just to unpack some of the leader ready areas. Ready, steady, go. Where are we at on our stress dial? What does that look like? What are our responses? What works for us? What works for those that are around us? And actually learning from that as we get alongside children and young people. Who are our go-to people? Different approaches. So much of what helps us can be so helpful for other people, and often some of those answers are already there, but actually it's the noticing them, it's kind of really pressing into that gold can be really helpful. I love this element, and it's very visual. Lots of the resources that we've developed. What is in our emotional first aid response? What are those thoughts, those people, those feelings? Something that is really key to our resources is we want them to be very visual. We want them to be multi-sensory. Ray Morfin, who's our head of therapeutic practice. She's also married to our founder and chief exec, Tim Morfin, if people haven't made that connection. Ray is a brilliant practitioner and creative mind. And she was also the founder of our early intervention work. So that context of the one-to-one flowing into now our training is really key, and Ray's led that process seamlessly. Ray is currently in training as well to become a qualified therapist herself, and her creativity as well as lots of others as well has really been such a blessing to the church and through this training. So far this year, we've trained hundreds of people through the Emotional Rollercoaster, and I think since it's began, it's over 2,000 now. And primarily that is online. So that's something that, just as a model, we found has worked really well, both through COVID, but also coming out of it as well. So presenting everything in this context is something that we've has been kind of central to the emotional roller coaster and its reach. A model that you may well be familiar with that has just been really key for not just the ERC but also our work for our programs is PACE. Comes from the psychologist Dan Hughes, and the acronym as it's broken down really I think brings a huge amount of clarity in terms of how to use space time well. I love the playfulness, the joy, the visual aspect of connection, and that's something that we look to bring to our resources, to our coaching that we do through early intervention. Acceptance, where young people are at. We're not necessarily there to correct or to change, but there to really step in, and curiosity to the journey. We're alongside young people, and hopefully we're able to be a presence that is consistent, that can bring stability to situations that may be really unstable. To be in a presence of empathy and compassion. I love how this puts it in the training, allowing emotions to breathe. Some other practitioners and research that's been really key to the roller coaster resource, and it's shared through the session itself. One of them is from Nadine Harris Burtz and the research around ACEs, so adverse childhood experiences, and really understanding that, unpacking that. Something that we go into through this training is the topic of toxic stress, and understanding ACEs and the impact that can have as we support children and young people. A couple of others, Dan Segal and the concept of the hand brain. That's something that we look at a lot in the emotional roller coaster, and also the work of Louise Bomber, who's a great friend of TLG. Something that people may well be familiar with. Commend the work of all of the people that I've just mentioned, but Louise has written some great stuff on the topic of emotional well-being. So yeah, we've really benefited from the work and practice of lots of experts, which has been really really helpful. So to continue, it's very relational. The training, what we look to bring, how we look to then outwork the resources with children and young people. I don't think I mentioned earlier, but the resource itself and the training itself is pitched around the years, around the ages of 8 to 14. I think there can be some flexibility there, and some of the resources in the resource shop do speak to older age groups, and that's all laid out more clearly if you get there. But I think there's definitely going to be accessible uses, primary and secondary, and lots of people can tailor and use what you find works. Yeah, as we walk through. So there's different sessions, different activities that the roller coaster really maps out. I think the image of the roller coaster and the change that a roller coaster brings, the highs, the lows, the fast, the slow. This metaphor has been outworks really well in this in this resource, and it's the journey of emotional well-being, isn't it? Emotions are different, are varied, and it's so important to notice them, to notice what we're feeling, what is happening within. So yeah, the resource is all about journeying through these stages and providing space for conversations, and we hope the resource gives ideas, it gives some thoughts, it gives some grounding in the theories that we've laid out, just to help us as we're there alongside children and young people, as we outwork that PACE model of playfulness, acceptance, curiosity, and empathy. Resources aren't going to be the solution for everybody, of course. The emotional roller coaster isn't going to be necessarily that breakthrough for everybody. But what it allows us to do is to really focus and press into the relationships that we have, and hopefully can be a guide, and bring some ideas. And that's everything that I had to share on the presentation. Before we go into some breakout rooms, I'll put some links into the chat so people have those at this early point. First of all, I'm going to share the web page for the roller coaster, and that will then allow you to book into the session next week, should you wish. It's entirely free of charge, and it is very much you only need to attend one, but there's nothing to stop you from attending more than one should you wish. I will also pop in the link to the resource shop, and that will allow you to find out more about some resources that we've developed, some of which in partnership with friends of ours and other organisations. We've developed a series of resources with Safe Families, so they could be really helpful. And the first aid and the roller coaster resources are also in there as well. And then finally, if you would like to find out more about TLG and hear more ahead of time about sessions in 2024 for our training, you can fill out this link. And you can also tick the box to receive our book, Out of the Ordinary, which will tell you a lot more about the TLG story. And we've added in some in the last couple of years, some new chapters that really bring about where the emotional roller coaster has come from. So I hope they're all helpful, and I look forward to hopefully answering some questions in a little while. Thank you.
Right, thank you, Rob. So that was really just an overview of what of this course that's available from TLG. I think we'd be hard pushed to cover that content in 20 minutes. So we hope that that will be so an introduction to you, so you might like to go and explore that further. I just think it's super important that we do kind of help ourselves be more aware of some of the pressures that young people are under, young people are under, and some of the ways that we can engage with them. Our first response to a child, young person who's struggling emotionally can be crucial in helping them to begin to find some sort of answers to what they're dealing with. So we're going to do some breakout rooms, and you're welcome to contribute or otherwise. There may be some questions that you have for Rob directly probably about that course or about Emotional Rollercoaster, or it might just be that you want to chat to the people around you that you discover in your breakout room and swap stories about prayer spaces in schools, or any questions that you have. So this is just a general opportunity to chat with a few other folks around prayer spaces in schools, around the emotional well-being of children and young people. And we'll come back at about 1:15. So we've got welcome back, everyone. Now at this point we've got an opportunity. If you do have a question that you'd like to ask, it can be for Rob about TLG, about the Emotional Rollercoaster, or any of the other projects that TLG run, or it could be about prayer spaces in schools. Can I suggest you stick it in the chat, and we'll pick these questions up one at a time as we go along. So Rob, what might a session of the Emotional Rollercoaster look like? How does that run?
Yeah, so three key elements. Firstly, looking after ourselves, so encountering our own emotions. Then we go into some space to really unpack some theory around emotional first aid, and I think definitely an introduction into understanding emotional well-being more.
Yeah.
And then we'll unpack the emotional rollercoaster resource.
Mm.
So that is the emotional rollercoaster session in itself.
Mhm.
And just so it's clear for everybody, for the emotional first aid, it's those first two elements.
Mm. So there's the Emotional Rollercoaster course is a 2 hour course online, and
Yes,
it's all in that 2 hours.
that's right. So all
Yeah.
of those three
Yeah.
elements is in the 2 hours, and then
Mhm.
yeah, the emotional first aid is a shorter session.
Right.
How
Yeah.
we've described it before is the emotional roller coaster is especially helpful for people that are working more directly with children and young people. So I think
Mm.
people running prayer spaces exactly that. It's also a place where lots of children's workers or teachers, schools workers. The emotional first aid is a bit more accessible, catch-all, could be for the whole church.
Mm. And that's the one
We
hour.
that's about an hour and 20
Yeah.
hour and a half.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
We also do provide the emotional roller coaster for schools, and we do run training in different contexts. So if people think it could be of interest to their school,
Mhm.
then the link is connected on the emotional roller coaster page. But I'll just pop that
Yeah.
into the chat.
Thank you.
People can find out more. And then I'll
Emma.
also
Oh yeah.
an email address just for people to find out anything about any sort of any questions that come up. The therapeutic practice at TLG that will give you any info, bespoke training, resource purchases, things like that.
Great. Emma has asked, is there a recommended timescale for it, or does it continue to be revisited? Is the Emotional Rollercoaster course something that's updated fairly often? Is it something that's worth coming back to again? How long have you been running it, and what's your kind of roadmap for it?
Yeah, sure. So we've been running it for so where are we now? Over 3 years.
Yeah.
It was all a bit of a blur 2020. I'm
Mhm.
sure people can relate. And it has developed, and we have had people that have attended the training, and yeah, more than once. People are more always welcome. It's
Yeah.
often something people invite friends to and then come along to. Um, we develop other sorts of training resources and sessions as well. So if you fill out the keep in touch link, you can find out more about other sessions that could be helpful. We've done some sessions with Safe Families, with Kintsugi Hope. So there's different things like that help build on the roller coaster.
Mm.
The emotional roller coaster is free of charge to book into that webinar next week. It's free of charge to churches as well. We'll be running those sessions. We target to do a session each month, sometimes more.
Mm.
And the team has said to me that I think by about mid-Jan they'll have quarter one and perhaps some of quarter two mapped out for roller coaster sessions.
Right.
Appreciate next Wednesday evening may not work for everybody, but you're very welcome if it does.
Yeah. So it's been asked: is it training for adults or working with pupils, or could you then be delivered to pupils? Is it?
Yeah, so the training is for adults who are then working with children, young people, and we give the guide of around 8 to 14. We find that works well. On the
Mm.
resource shop, we do have resources that are specifically for young people to
Mm.
use themselves,
Mm.
but it's all mapped out very clear who is what each resource is aimed for. But yeah, the roller coaster is definitely pitched at adults, but for their work with children, young people.
So yeah, so Emotional Rollercoaster is for people like us working with children, young people, and it's a kind of a one-hit, 2 hour overview about how you can support children, young people who are struggling emotionally. But it's not a course that you would then run with children or young people. I think if you wanted to do something that was more ongoing to support children, I would highly recommend the early intervention work that TLG do. Just a quick overview. That's there's some money has to change hands for that one, doesn't there? but then there's training for your team, and you get like a year's worth of resources, which are just exceptional, really, really good material. But how does, just in a nutshell, Rob, how does early intervention work?
Yeah, so early intervention is a program that we partner with a church to run, and then train and equip that church to work with a local school, and then a team of coaches supporting one-to-one. So we provide resource sessions to equip you for the coaching, an hour a week across a year. So that's a lot of resources, but you will never run out of resources. We're always developing new ones as well. So that's a very different program to the roller coaster.
Yeah.
The roller coaster resource itself gives you content for lots of interactions with children and young people, and then the resource shop gives you can purchase physical copies of the resource should you wish, but we do provide the PDF free of charge, which can work. Obviously, can be printed out. Just some people have preferred having the the printed versions, and obviously just that cost just helps us kind of cover those costs from that side.
Thank you. It's a really helpful introduction to what TLG is, does, and how it can help us. I hope that's been new news to some of you. I know some of the folks here have already been doing TLG into early intervention, so well done for that. That's good. Rob, a question I love asking people, asking our guests. Just a final question for you, really. What brings you hope? This is springing this on you, but what brings you hope when the work that you're doing, the people that you are resourcing, the children and people that you get to work with or hear about, what brings you hope at the moment in the work that you do?
That's a great question. I think our volunteers. I'll just share one story if I've got time. One of our volunteers at our staff conference in September, we gave him an award for 10 years of early intervention coaching, and he began. He went to the training day to become an early intervention coach. Very unsure whether it would be for him. He had recently retired, and he went into it, thought, I'll give it a go, but really want to spend my time doing different things. Very quickly, he realized God had other plans. And in the last 10 years, he's coached 25 children, sometimes in the same academic year, I think 5 at one point. So that's 5 hours a week in school, individual relationships, individual needs. He's coached siblings from the same families, and it's just given the last 10 years or the first 10 years of his retirement. He would say it's brought him far more than he thinks the children would have benefited. But that's what gives me hope. It's volunteers out there, passionate about reaching out to children, young people, giving space. It makes such a difference. People bringing what they have, all sorts of different generations, people not saying the no for themselves, but giving it a go, can make such a difference. And 60 years separates this volunteer and a lot of the young people that he's worked with, but the connection is incredible. Our volunteers give me a lot of hope.
Rob, that's fantastic. Thank you so much. And to all of you on this call tonight, you are those people too, to churches, to the schools you're serving, and particularly to the children, young people that you're working with. You are that voice of hope in their lives. It's just brilliant. And especially that generation that Rob mentioned, the ones that are, maybe 50 or 60 years older than the children, young people they're working with, just have so much to give. So I'm always encouraging people, go and recruit those people from your churches. They may not think that they could do anything more youth or children wise, but they might make great TLG coaches or great helpers in your prayer spaces that you run.